everybody. Everybody's starting to take a seat now. So we have 4 writers on stage, and we're going to talk about the process, I guess. Right, guys? Yeah. Okay. But we're going to, first of all, so there's 4 totally distinct shows, different shows, all of them on right now. Well, Saul's not on right now, right? No. Okay. But it will be back. Saul will always be renewed. So we're going to... Saul will always be renewed. Yeah, once you make Breaking Bad, Saul's always gonna, and you know, Saul now is in the pantheon, so it'll be renewed. But as everybody takes their seat, we're gonna start with we're gonna show some clips, but we're gonna start with a clip from Saul. Yeah, I love that scene.
That's a long clip.
Not as long as when we get to Lucifer, right, Sheri? No, just kidding. We all had dinner last night, except for Michael. We're going to make fun of Michael for not showing up, and we're going to make fun of Riverdale. There's no Riverdale clip. That's penalty. No, just kidding. There'll be a reenactment. We're going to do a puppet reenactment of the second season. So no, I love that scene, Tom, and I think that's a perfect example of like sort of the power of the writer and television writer being TV being a writer's medium, despite a column I wrote this week about that.
Wait a minute, what?
Well, directors are, we'll get to a director's question later, because
Okay.
I think everybody's directed, except Michael, I don't think you've directed. Yes, everybody's directed. But talk about sort of the power of like that scene, which is basically all words and emotion.
I mean, I think the reason I picked this clip was because the actors, this is episode 9 of season 1, and when we were first starting the season, we didn't quite know all the characters. We sort of knew Saul Goodman, but we didn't know Jimmy McGill. We didn't know Chuck McGill. And when we started the season, this scene was nowhere in our brains. I mean, we probably got to episode 7 before we realized that, oh, wait a minute, Chuck betrayed Jimmy, and a lot of it had to do with the actors and what Michael McKean brought to the role and what Bob was bringing to the role. I mean, Bob has an edge of anger and also sweetness, so there's so much of that in Jimmy McGill. But Michael McKean, the character was originally a little more pathetic than what it became, and Michael brought this pride to the character, and that. So what I'm trying to say is, when you're writing on a show, let your actors sort of inform who the characters become. Don't get locked into, oh, Chuck has to be this or that. Michael brought so much to the character that it started seeping into the writer's room, and once we saw what he was doing on film, this pride came through and totally informed who Chuck became for the rest of the series.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, that speaks to how actors can change anything. And is that a common thing where
we try to let it be? I mean, I think early on, you get into, you just don't realize it. You're thinking, I'm the writer. I'm complete control of who this character is. I think it's better to be open and let your actors, bring what they have to the character and sort of guide you. It feels more real to me anyway. If it's a sort of it's a team effort. I mean, and again, this clip, even though I'm credited for writing it, we have a full writers' room. We're breaking the scenes, so lots of brains are participating in what goes on the screen.
And we're going to have a still that goes up a little bit later that from the Better Call Saul writing room that sort of shows how the episodes and the seasons broke down. But I guess just quick before we go to another clip, Tom, are you saying that like you can get to episode 7 of the first season and think, we forgot something and we need to figure it out before the 9th episode? How's that?
Not that we forget anything. We don't in our room. We don't arc out the entire season. We kind of just go episode by episode and beat by beat, and what we call brick by brick is each beat at a time. And the characters, sounds like bullshit, but we kind of let the characters tell us where we want to go. We'll put up sort of big ideas of where we might get to, but we have the discipline to not force ourselves to go to that place. If it doesn't work, we don't go there. If we see something new, which was sort of what this scene was, we go in that direction.
Excellent. Okay, and we have a clip from Ghost Wars that Simon created and wrote. We can roll that. Excellent. And Ghost Wars started on Sci-Fi not too long ago. I was walking down here with Michael, who wasn't able to make it to dinner last night. He got in late. Yeah, we're just going to make fun of Michael all day. But I told Simon, I told Michael, and you should have seen his face. I said, yeah, so Simon's new series, Sci-Fi didn't send any links or any screeners to any critics. So no one got a chance to review it beforehand.
That's true. Sometimes you get let down by the very people who are promoting you. So yeah, it premiered on Thursday night, and I think 14 people saw the premiere.
So that's just sort of, you can do as much work in the writer's room as you want and direct episodes and everything else, but if you got to, they've got to help you out. But I'm sure people will circle back around it. We'll talk a little bit about how crazy just making television is these days. But Simon, you've had some history in genre writing. How did that play when you make this, making Ghost Wars?
Yeah, there's positives and negatives to being branded a genre writer. You get to own your corner in a way, but to make it interesting for yourself, you have to keep changing up what genre means, because it ends up being something you can lean on to get work, but you also get penned in a way that you have to find the stories you want to tell through the lens of genre writing, which is challenging. The fun thing about Ghost Wars was, even though I was approached to do a show that was essentially a ghost story, you look at every opportunity, you look at every framework or every box of constraints that you're given as also an opportunity to do the story you actually want to tell without it. And I'd always wanted to do something that was kind of more in the, even though this clip, you wouldn't know it from that clip, the show's actually quite humorous and light and weird. And so it was an opportunity to do a show that I felt was more like a John Landis 1980s movie like American Werewolf in London than something like The Ring or something more contemporary in the horror field. So for me, it was like exercising a gear or a muscle that I don't get to exercise very often, right, which was more on the lighter side. So that's kind of what Ghost Wars is ultimately, and so that's a funny thing about being cornered a little bit. You find excuses to write the kind of stories you want to without being branded, and genre's a good place to do it.
And you didn't, and you didn't have to do a pilot. This is right. Yeah,
this was a straight to series. This was a very unusual situation where the network actually said to me, I was working on Van Helsing, and they said, "We want you to, you don't come back next year to Van Helsing because you've done your job. We'd like you to do another show for us, and we want to do a ghost story." And I said, "Well, what do you have in mind?" And they said, "Well, we want to do a story about a small town that's haunted." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "No, that's it. The rest is up to you." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I sat down and thought about that for a bit.
That's great. And also, it sounds like based on what you just said about sort of circumventing, genres and restrictions on genres, you basically could have given them. I mean, it is a ghost story, and it is a small town that's haunted, and it's in Alaska.
It could have been 10 different shows. I mean, there's and you realize that when you sit down, you go, "Oh my God, is this going to be 30 Days of Night? Is this going to be this? Is it going to be, contemporary Japanese, modernist horror?" It's even within the subgenre, you have all these options. I just thought about what I liked watching when I was growing up. I usually go back to that.
Yeah, and we talked about sort of breaking out a season or going episode to episode. What is it like in your writer's room?
Well, we don't have the money that Saul has, so I'll just. What's your writing room?
We don't have that much money.
How many weeks is your room, Tom?
We have a long time. We have an embarrassing long time in the writer's room. We have months before.
I need a number.
We started writing in July, and we don't shoot until January. So we have.
Wow.
So
6 months in the writer's room.
6 months. I have 3.
No, I don't.
Not even 3.
I don't envy you.
I have 10 weeks to get up to speed on 13 hours. So we usually break our season in the first 2 weeks, and then we start going through individual episodes. It's pretty accelerated. We stop halfway through so that the writers can go write scripts. Then we reconvene and do the other 6 or 5 weeks, depending on where we stop. But it's pretty fast.
Yeah. And how many writers do you have on your staff? And I'll circle back to you.
On my staff, we had on Ghost Wars, it was me, Dennis Heaton, Rachel Langer, Damon Vignali, Sonia Bennett, Karen Lamb. So that's 6 total.
Great.
And we had a script coordinator.
And Tom, how many are on?
6 plus our executive producers, Peter Gold. Vince isn't writing this year or last year, but he'll direct this year.
Great, and so we have a clip from Lucifer for a Sheri show, and then we'll do that, and we'll talk after we see it. It's a pan flute.
Yeah.
It's always good to get pan flute in there anyway, right?
Every script.
Yeah. So we were talking to Sheri about, it's also not a whole lot of promotion for season 3 of Lucifer.
Almost none.
Almost none. So it's hell out there, really. But I said to her that the show did, without much promotion, did something that almost is never done. It's the third season premiere, which was not that long ago, topped. It was the highest rated of anything. So in the third year, it's actually growing. It was the highest rated thing. So did you get a bunch of flowers in your office the next day, or?
We did not. No, the show is it's a nice little performer. And we were talking last night about the fact that it's, the only show that I've been on where my parents watch it, their friends at the grocery store watch it, my kids' friends know what it is, their parents watch it. It's kind of an odd little network show that cuts across a bunch of the demographics. And I think one of the reasons for that and why I chose this clip is it's a cop show, which is very easy to dismiss, but it's also quite funny. But it's not just the silliness. It's also about, and we really, really try to drive down hard on this. It's about the devil finding out where his moral compass really stands. And it's about that sucker punch of what is good, what is bad, is there any difference, what's the gray area in between. We really try to infuse all the characters with that. So it does have a bit of emotional resonance, and I think that's why people respond to it.
Right. And how big is the writing room at Lucifer?
We have 9 writers, including us EPs, and an assistant and a script coordinator.
And how many episodes are you generally writing per year? Per season?
Me personally?
Yeah.
3 or 4.
You had said last night that, and I want to get to that too for everybody, it's like where you do your work and whatever. You were talking about kind of like moving in and out of the writer's room and how disoriented that is when you're actually working on your show for that week and then you come back and everybody's breaking episodes going forward.
Yeah, it's a real game of catch-up because we're moving so quickly because there are so many episodes. We each cover our own episodes. When we write the episode, then we go to set and we cover set. So I just finished writing the mid-season finale, which we finished shooting on Thursday. So I was out of the room for prep and for production, so it was quite a chunk of time. And so by the time I got back into the room, 3 episodes had been broken. And I'm trying to keep up with the notes, but it's not the same as actually being there in the room. So I said, why don't we take a 5-minute break? I'm going to go get some coffee. And I'm like frantically going through the notes and, getting caught up. There's not a lot of time to ruminate.
Well, also you, different from our 2 cable gentlemen here, you're doing 22 episodes per season, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's a lot more. And how long is how many do you? I think you said upstairs that you break out just 1 episode at a time, or how's that done in the writers' room?
When we first started, because we knew we were in a bit of a time crunch, we split the room. So we had 2 rooms going. We've got the A room and the B room, and it really breaks down to odds and evens.
So the B room isn't just like the B level writers.
Well, yeah. No. We had to do that. We put a couple, of senior staff in each room, and we just tried to bank. We wanted 7 scripts before we actually went to camera, which we achieved.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have because you're in the 3rd season? Do you have a lot of staff rollover? Or how's that work out?
We've had no staff rollover.
Really?
We had 1 writer leave because he sold a pilot and was doing a movie. So he went on to another show, but it's been pretty consistent. It's a happy place to work. We all really like each other. Everyone's really nice and very supportive. It's evenly split, down the gender line, which is great. Yeah. And it's also a bunch of different writers. We've got 1 guy that came from procedural. We've got a comic book writer. We have, I was the dark cable comedy writer. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all serve a part.
Good. And then just to close it out, Michael, we have no clip for you.
We could just play the Lucifer one again, though.
Yeah, we're gonna do a puppet. Seriously, it's not Michael's fault. That
We
we
could
don't
act
have
out a scene from Riverdale right
We
here.
could do that. Yeah. Do it. I like that. Isn't that? So we're gonna have fun up here. But so you were going into the second season, and you're also executive producer. What went into the? There's a lot of talk about how you present this series to an audience, season one, and you kind of establish it, but then you guys are going to kind of flip it on its head in season two. Can you talk a little bit about making it like a really big change like that?
Yes. To clarify, I'm a co-executive producer.
Okay.
I'd love to be called an executive producer, but I'm not that yet.
Okay.
Season one was really about getting to know the town. It was a murder mystery. And going into season two, I know the showrunner, creator, Roberto Grassi was sort of thinking, how are we going to do another murder mystery? So I think we sort of stepped away from the idea of a murder mystery and sort of are launching a different type of mystery this season, which we're excited about. But every time you sort of shift gears on a show, it does feel like the chemistry changes, the dilemmas change, and you sort of have to re-examine how you're going to tell stories. And I think this mystery sort of brings out interesting darkness within each of our characters. It sort of feels like a new attack. And it sort of feels a little bit more in the present as opposed to something that happened in the past, which is fun.
And just to circle back, what size are we talking for your guys' writers' room? Because you're doing 22 episodes too, or how
We're
many?
22 episodes.
Right.
Last year we were 13, and we are, I think, 12 writers in the room. And again, with an assistant and a script coordinator as well.
Right. And just to circle back to everybody, this is the Saul Writers Board. So that's what that looks like. But you said there's a lot more of these in the room, right?
Once we have an episode done, when the board stays up for the entire season, so because we're so serialized, and we always want to go back and see, wait, the character did that there, and how does that lead to what we do here? So looks like an insane person wrote this, but we're very meticulous.
Yeah, no, it does look, well, I mean, if you haven't seen the show, it's going to look really insane. But even if you have seen the show, and I've seen every single episode, it's kind of wild how you shorthand everything as you go through it, right?
Yeah, and this is from the episode the clip I showed. So that Chuck Jimmy scene is right down here at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
The handwriting is so clean.
This is all, and it's all comes from Chris Carter on the X-Files used this method, and Vince adopted it and continued using it. So we suffer from something called card creep, where on X-Files there used to be less cards. Now we put so much detail into it that it kind of builds up, and you see Act 2 has 3 lines, which would never be allowed on the X-Files. And we end up stacking cards because we run out of room, but we try to keep it as simple as we can.
Well, that's just based on that. I think something kind of interesting. Do any of you guys have you? I mean, you just talked about basically a procedure you learned as you were getting into it from somebody else, and now you're continuing it. Do you guys all have a sort of rituals that you learned when you first started that you're still doing now? Anybody?
Well, this is a beautiful board, by the way.
Yeah,
I think
the
I'm
nicest
really
board I've
impressed.
ever seen.
Something that we always did, that I've always done, and we've continued on Riverdale, is we always pick a color of card that sort of represents the character's essence. So, for example, like our Archie cards are always red, our Veronicas are purple, our Bettys are yellow. So that's always fun. to write
Unclean.
on that. We have a color code.
Tom says that's unclean. Yeah.
So do you guys talk about what's going to go on the card well in advance before it's written?
We talk it to death. Every
Yeah.
card up there is discussed, which is why it takes us 6 fucking months to break 10 episodes.
I feel like
of
we're just like
television.
scribbling ideas down on cards and scrawl and throwing them up, and then
it's sort of this.
I can't read any of them because it's so haphazard.
Frank Spotnitz used to describe the process of writing cards as sort of a zen. It sort of helped you. Yes, you can talk about it. Well, once you put it on the card, it feels like this is complete. And we go back and change cards, and they move around. We'll shift things from act to act to make sure they work correctly. But
Sheri, is there anything that you took when you first started?
On all of that board. Gosh, well, this is the opposite of these pristine cards, but when we're talking about a story and breaking a story, we always start from first theme, so we feel good about ourselves. And then we start talking about what do we want to see in this episode? What are the bigs? We talk about the bigs, and we stick those up there, and we kind of work around the essence of those. And another thing the Lucifer Writers Room does, and this is people are kind of shocked when I tell them this, is that we group write outlines. I don't know many other rooms that do that, but because we're moving so quickly, we break these stories within an inch of their lives, and we board them, and they're very, very meticulous. And then just in the, for time, we split the acts up. And then the assigned writer will then, they're given the Herculean task of like piecing together the disaster, the Frankenstein disaster that it is. But it gives everybody a chance to sort of weigh in on the episode, and we all take, a great deal of ownership on every single episode. So people aren't just squirreling away for weeks, laboring over their episode. So we really all feel that we've got a stake in the show.
I think when people look at shows like this, if you're not already doing, I'm sure some of you might be writers and are doing your own stuff, but looking at like a professional television series that has a writer's room, so I think one of the questions is like, you're talking about episodes, but do you guys also, bring it, anybody can pitch in here, like what is it like when you're sitting down and trying to figure out the entire arc of the year? Are you breaking out like the whole season? How does that work?
It varies, I think. I mean, it feels like now that I'm on my third show, the goalposts have become very important for the season. You kind of have a conversation and go, let's just blue sky, where do we want to end up? Like, what's the feeling we want to have at the end of the season? How do we want to feel about these characters? And also the complexities of the story. You never want it to be just this fastball down the middle. You want to know that there are going to be surprises that are not just twists and turns, plot device twists and turns, but an idea that the season will end in a way that is unexpected but also appropriate. And how do you manufacture that? It's really hard to manufacture those. And that's kind of like going back to being an audience member and the way you feel at the end of a season and how you feel about the next season that is, a year away, and how you are excited, anticipatory, and all those emotions. So I like having that conversation early on, just getting down to audience brass tacks and feelings, and then we come up with ideas that may or may not be structurally sound story points that will fit that feeling in. And I always go back to character. I think character, what will the character do that will surprise you? But you'll go, oh my God, of course that happened. That's absolutely right. But I didn't see that decision. And I think if you can structure your plot around that feeling, you are usually on the right track. And then the details will come, and you'll throw around 100 ideas and throw out 99. But I really like a story where you don't have to rely necessarily on a plot device to turn the season at the end, but it's something that is really character driven, and then the plot becomes in service of that.
I agree. I agree with Simon. It's important to always work with beginning with character, and then know your goalposts and sort of know where you're headed, and then at the same time stay very loose, because anything can change and stuff can always evolve. And when you're focusing on one storyline, something else might really shine and sort of gain momentum, and that happens sort of every step of the process. Even in editing a story that you thought would be the A story, something else sort of rises to the surface, and it becomes the more important thing. So it's know where you're headed, but it really helps to be open to also letting actors grow and character grow throughout the process.
Yeah, I mean, like Tom, when you said that you could tell from the actors sort of changed the character just by how they presented themselves, how they acted. Is there anything you guys, anybody, when you're looking at story, I like the idea of like keeping it loose, because do you ever do an idea where it works so much better in execution and you're like, oh, we really need to amplify that part because that scene or that direction makes a lot more sense now? Is there ever like a curveball like that happens?
I think tonally that can happen. I think when you put the cast together, there's this weird moment. You're in the writing room, you've been in the writing room for a couple of weeks or months, and suddenly the cast starts getting signed, especially in a new show. And I get to walk into the writer's room and say, we signed Vincent D'Onofrio to play the priest. And everyone's like, oh my God, we have to rethink everything. We wrote him as this, and now we have this opportunity to do something else. Or, for example, Kim Coates, who brings a completely different energy that he kind of brings his own energy that you can't really write. You have to write for him. And so as soon as we cast Kim, and his sense of humor and sort of his amazing everyman twist on the worldview, I think that really helps you go, oh, maybe this is what the show is as you're halfway through writing it, which is a very scary but also exhilarating feeling, because it's in the firmament. The cast is set, literally. It's that actor, and all we can do now is catch up and figure out how best to service that within the confines of what we've already broken. And I think that's incredibly. That's a really exciting period in the room. And a new show. It's not so much on a season 2 or 3, but even with a guest star, you can sort of have that feeling of a new actor coming on and going, oh, this is going to change everything based on what we perceive.
And it's also a matter of listening to your audience too, because we're in the fortunate position of actually writing while the show is airing, and we've had characters on our show where just like, oh, and people go bananas for that character, and then we need to, start servicing that character and just being respectful of that and realizing that we're not writing in a vacuum, and sort of our vision for someone maybe, hasn't been fully exploited.
So like a character can totally pop off the page.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And then like
100%.
they need to be more. Did a little, I don't know. For me, as somebody who like Nacho seems like somebody that would like.
Well, when we started Better Call Saul, everybody, I think, to a person in the writer's room, thought he would be Saul Goodman by the end of season 1. Right. So we had this character, Nacho, who was sort of in the underworld, and we thought, we're going to need him because they're going to get together, but that just all went out the window because we found the process of getting Jimmy McGill to Saul Goodman to be much, much slower than we imagined. So Nacho did not have as much involvement in season 1, and he actually became more of he got into Mike Ehrmantraut's world a lot more. So that it's just one of those things that, again, as we hire these actors for the season. We have them for the full year, but in season 1, Nacho was in like 3 episodes. So it's just we didn't feel compelled to, oh God, we hired this actor, we must have a scene with him. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we just save him for later. And as Jimmy McGill gets closer to Saul Goodman, the Nacho character, as we're breaking season 4, we were like, oh, we have more Nacho happening now. So
yeah. Well, it's also just specific to you and how it relates to everybody here. It runs the gamut. Simon just started a show from scratch. Riverdale's going to go in its 2nd season, but also making big changes. You're in your 3rd season. With Lucifer, you're actually getting a new big bad or a new person come in. But you guys also had a weird way to do the show, and that is you had a pre-existing show, and your character has to end up as that person that everybody knew before, but we didn't know what he was like years and years before. Right. It's a prequel. So how did you sort of like see the hole at the end and have to like put a
we're still
right through it?
Finding that target. I mean, it's a really strange show because we do attempt to stay very loose and not, let the characters tell us where we go. But then we have this other thing was we know he becomes Saul Goodman, so sometimes we'll go in a direction we're like, well, we're never going to get there if we do that, so we have to backtrack and find something else. So it's a really weird show. I think if Breaking Bad didn't exist, Better Call Saul would be a much different show. We're all kind of dreading him becoming Saul Goodman because Saul Goodman's such a nasty, selfish character, and we love Jimmy McGill, but that's what we signed up for.
Yeah, well, and that's also part of the heartbreaking part of it. If you're watching Saul and you see if you see Jimmy before he becomes Saul is kind of a sweet guy. He's taking care of his brother, and then we know what he's going to become, and it seems like he's spiraled into darkness probably because of his brother. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to hold on to like that nice part before you get there, or?
Probably, I think we are trying to as much as possible, but it's slipping away now. So.
and just quickly at this, is there a sense that when you get to Saul, as we saw him in Breaking Bad, that the show's over?
We don't know. I mean, that's as writers of the show, we don't really know. We talk about, will we see moments between the raindrops of Breaking Bad? Will there be scenes that exist in the world of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, or are we just going to get to the moment we first see Saul Goodman on the show. I mean, we're working that out. We're hoping, you know, then he's this character Gene who works at Cinnabon post Breaking Bad. So there's this whole other area that we're trying to get to. So there'll be, you know, it's all up in the air. We're just.
I have a
It's a
question
mystery
for
to us,
Tom.
too.
I'm just curious because I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad and Saul. And do you guys discuss the cameos from Breaking Bad at the beginning of the season, or is it something that organically comes up?
Just organically comes up. If something, my first episode of season 2, we needed an obnoxious asshole at a bar, and we thought, oh, there's this character Ken Wins from season 1 of Breaking Bad, who would be perfect for that. So that, you know, if we have a board in our room that has every character from Breaking Bad, just to remind us of who was in that world, and if there's a need, I'll be like, oh, we can use that guy or that gal, and bring them in. So, but we're not forcing. We're trying not to force it. It's fun to bring them back, but
How can you? It seems like it'd be possible not to be tempted every time to go. Okay, Hector Salamanca, go.
We've brought in quite a few Breaking Bad characters, so we're, you know, it's the world does seem smaller the more you bring in, you know, but we can't resist it sometimes.
Well, we were, Michael, you were not at dinner last night, so we're going to start with you. I'm going to start with you because
Why did you miss
I
dinner?
know, why was it?
Why weren't you there?
I was just
Lies.
flying
This
in.
is going to be great. This is going to hold it. No, but I want to start with you, Michael, because last night we did talk, and everybody's going to take a turn on this. Just a really simple question, like where do you do your best writing, and do you feel like you can be creative in the writer's room, or do you feel like you need to like get in your car and drive halfway across LA or wherever you are to do something better?
Great question. Walks are nice. Walks are good for sort of stepping out of the room and sort of gaining perspective. Stepping away from a story sometimes can go a long way. I grew up in a household with 5 sisters. It was a very loud household, so I actually like to be around noise, and I'm always writing sort of not in coffee shops, but like on the couch where like my boyfriend and dog are shuffling around, and like or like even at work, like I won't tuck away into my office. I'll be in the main area, and it's sort of, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like so much work has to get done all the time, so I'm kind of writing everywhere. Like wherever I'm opening my laptop, I'm like, that's where I'm writing right now. It's just always happening. So yeah, that's sort of the process.
Yeah, I think you stopped looking at writing as kind of this precious thing. It's not. It's not precious. It's like it becomes like a breathing day to day. And actually, I find that I'm like Michael in the sense that I like to stop and think on a hike and just try and process things. But I also like to work with 8 things going on. I like to be. I find that not only am I more effective as a writer, I also produce more. So weirdly, the calm of being between shows or everything is very unproductive for me, and I get way more work done when I'm weirdly on another show. I wrote 2 spec pilots during the season of writing Ghost Wars because I was just such in the habit of writing all the time that it just became second nature to sit down and write, and you don't think about it, which is great. You don't have to like, oh, I have to arrange things and dim the lights and turn on the music or be in my special chair. It was like, no, I can do it anywhere, and I can just produce because I have to do that all the time. And so as you learn the craft, you learn those things about yourself as a writer and how you can depend on yourself. I'm a procrastinator when I don't have a deadline, when I don't have a swirling storm of shit to do. I can really make excuses to play video games and watch movies and spend time with friends and family. But at the end of the day, being driven to deliver is a great space to be creative. I find I can, just pound out the pages, which is really nice when you need it. Because on a TV show, you have to do that all the time. Sheri.
Sure.
I don't have the luxury of having my special writing corner anymore. I learned how to write pretty much anywhere in chaos. When I had kids first, there was a boot closet in the house that had a lock on it from the inside. I don't know why. It was weird. So I you know, that's where I would go to do my special conference calls because I was a professional, damn it, you know, with screaming and chaos outside. So, yeah, anywhere, like the chaos, I can do it. And yeah, and working in TV, you've got to be fast. You don't really have the luxury of, you know, taking your sweet time. But my problem solving, because it's always the challenge, is, you know, the one step of getting things down on the page. But the actual real writing is the problem solving. That's when the laptop is closed, and that's, for me, early morning, like really, really early morning. You know, that moment, you know, after I open my eyes and before I have to actually deal, there's like a 45 minutes if I'm lucky in there, and that's when I crack things. Always, pretty
You
much.
learn to stop looking at the blank screen. I think
just
at a
gotta
certain
cl-
point,
yeah.
you builds up and builds up in your head, and you kind of you get to an inertia of ideas where you just have to sit down and kind of barf it out onto the keyboard, get it done, and then you can sort of repeat the process again and again and again. And what happens too is as you write more and more, you rewrite yourself less and less because you end up doing all those mistakes in conceptual space. And then you solve it in conceptual space, and then when you sit down to write it, you kind of already know that you've solved the problem, so you don't have to go back and look at it as many times as you used to. I mean, I used to do like 20 drafts, and I've gotten it down to like 19.
Yeah, but so much of the writing is done when the laptop is closed. I really believe that.
So
the talking,
head, basically,
in the head, and the talking it out, and you know, my husband's a writer too, and I think I'm driving him crazy right now because I'm trying to finish a pilot, but. You know, I'll go to him and I'll talk it out, and I don't care what he says. Like, I don't want his response, but it's just the saying it out. I do. He's here. But it's the saying it out loud. So by the end of my rant, I'm like, okay, yeah, and
So basically, significant others just need big ears, right? No mouth, big ears.
yes. No.
Any
He-
special?
he's
Not
helpful.
true, honey,
He's
not
helpful.
true.
Any special places? You're ironing, showering, something
No.
where good ideas come to you, or you just have to get it done.
Just get it done. I mean, my entire career, including before I actually was being paid to write, nighttime was the, you know, when I had a regular job, late night was the only time you had, so I just kind of fell into that, and so I've always written very late at night, usually with just music or the television on. But now that my wife and I have 2 children, I find myself so exhausted at night that now I am trying to just find time whenever. I mean, lunchtime while we're breaking in the writer's room, I'll write, and then once the deadline gets closer, like the other night, I just was like, fuck it, I'm going to stay up until 3 in the morning and just get as much out as I can because it has to be done.
I'm curious about the collaborative process because writing on a TV show is, you know, you're not like making your own play where you've written every word. How much of it becomes? I'm curious about the moments when you have something. I wouldn't say precious, but like you really want something, and then I mean, you're all basically the bosses. So at some point, you can't be overruled. But when someone says, "Oh, that's not working for me," but it's something that you really like, have you run into that situation?
Always.
Yeah, and you have to put that part of you away in a little box and far, far away. It's just like, the being precious part. So much happens so fast, and you kind of have to roll with it, and you kind of have to. At least for me, I'm working with the showrunner, and I always think of his job as the hardest job, and I'm like, what does he need? What does the show need? And the show doesn't need my precious. I want that beat. No, it's you sort of have to move past that. Yeah.
But has anybody ever? Have you? How much do you fight to hold on to something you really, really want, like a scene that you've created, or?
It varies. I mean, if there's something you really want, you're passionate about, you fight for it. But in our room, we pretty much get everyone to sign off on every beat. If somebody has a problem with something, we talk it to death. Because there's usually something right about what the one person, it's 12 Angry Men. It's like, so wait, this person has something is bothering them. Why is it bothering them? Let's discuss this, talk about what is not working, and then we're like, just get it until everybody says, okay, this is good. Let's move on to the next beat.
Mm-hmm. And you've all worked on a number of shows and seen staffs. I'm kind of curious as to what, and maybe this is something that they would want to ask too. But what makes a good writer, and when do you know someone's not cut out for it, but they've made it into the writer's room, and you don't have to name names, but when do you think this is not going to happen?
It's the draft. It's the draft. I've been on shows before where someone can be, smart and helpful in the room, and then the draft comes in, and it's all about not making more work for your bosses or for yourself. Like, I've literally had drafts delivered to me before where I know we broke the shit out of that story in the room, and the draft comes in and I will burst into tears. So I know that it's like, we got to deliver this draft to the studio in a week, and it's a word one, rewrite. And I go back over it, like, what could we have done differently in the room? And the fact of the matter is, like, you can be a really good writer and a brilliant intellect, but television writing it's very specific. It's very, very specific because you need several different muscles working, at the same time. You need to be the director and the writer and the actor and the producer, and you can learn the architecture, but the actual the jizz of it, sorry, it's hard to teach. It's hard to teach.
Right.
Yeah.
And because someone like that in the writer's room could really bog things down. Would you just end up like locking them inside that closet you have with the lock on the inside?
It depends who hired them. There's always, not always, but sometimes there's someone in the room that got the job because they're buddies with the studio executive, or they're buddies with the showrunner, or there's always sometimes that one. It's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah, I've been lucky that I've been blessed with really talented writers in the room, and like Sheri says, there's that moment of truth where the draft comes in, and you
scary.
Oh my God, what are we gonna do? But sometimes you don't really. I mean, I feel like the room is the place to go to fix a lot of things. I'm always keen to not be showrunnery in the sense that I have to fix everything. I don't like that model just because I'm a really lazy, and B, I really think that spreading the work out amongst the room is really a good place to find solutions and even the execution. So unlike a lot of showrunners I know who really want to control everything, if we get a bad draft, I'll usually throw it back into the room for help, and it depends on the amount of work. But it doesn't. I'm glad to say it doesn't happen very often. But when it has happened, and I'm saying like one script out of 13 which needed to be undone, and
Really?
and every season there's usually one problem child,
Right.
and it's never really anyone's fault. Sometimes it is from the cards that there's a flaw in the breaking, and sometimes it's a good writer but just the wrong writer for that story. You never know until it's really concrete and in front of you, and then we can go back in the room, and sometimes we've done things where we will do a Franken draft where we get a draft in, one person was assigned it, they wrote it, we bring it in, we talk about it in the room, everyone's pretty open and honest about things, and I have to sort of, as the leader, it's beneficial for me to be brutally honest but not personal.
Right.
So I basically just, without it being a personal exercise, I say, this is not working. We need to fix it as a group. And what I'll do sometimes is we'll throw like we have 6 acts on our show, which is a nightmare, but that's another story. And so I'll give everyone an act, and we'll just say, let's talk about it for a day and a half. We need this turned around quickly because it's in the mill now. We're shooting, we're getting scripts out, and then we'll talk it through. We'll talk out solutions. We'll note it up. We'll share the notes, and then I'll say, okay, you get act 1, you get act 2, you get act 3, I'll do this act. And then we all go away for a day, we scribble, and we come back. We put it all together, and then I'll do one quick pass to sort of smooth out the edges. We'll read it again, and we'll try and be as honest with each other as we can. There's a temptation that's a danger when you're the showrunner that everyone just wants you to think everything's fine. And especially your work.
Right.
I'm always nervous when I have to write an episode of the show because I always think I could be terrible. I could be George Lucas in the middle 3 Star Wars movies, and no one's telling me this is I shit the bed. And I don't want that. I don't want that dilemma of not being told the truth. It's really terrifying for me.
Right.
So I try and instill a openness so that people can say to me, "Hey, dude, like, you kind of whiffled this one. It's airball."
Right.
And I think that's really an important cultural place to be in your room, where people can say to you, especially your second in command, your co-EP, or the person you shared. I have Dennis Heaton is my co-showrunner really on Ghost Wars in terms of the amount of work we shared, and I hired him because I knew he would look me in the face and go, "You suck."
Right.
This is terrible.
He never said that to me.
I thought you were better than this. and I would go, "Oh yeah, he's right. I do suck." And I trust that he would say that to me, whereas I can't ask a junior writer to do that.
Right.
So you want to hire and work with people you believe will be honest with you, the way your wife or partner would be honest with you about the important things. Like, I don't want to see you fall flat on your face, so I'm going to be honest here. Don't wear that coat.
Yeah.
It happens to me every week.
I have two more questions in the time that we have. I want to get to quickly, but I think for Michael and Sheri, it's probably more directed at you guys because you're on networks, and I think that Tom and Simon are probably not getting the same kind of notes. I mean, they might be getting notes, but probably not the same kind. How frustrating is it when you guys do something and then the network note comes in, and you're like, "What? What is this?" Or does that even happen?
Yeah. Well, you want to go?
Everybody's like, "No, I don't want to talk about my
How can I answer this
network."
question and still have a job tomorrow?
I have my diplomatic answer canned.
God,
I'm
I
like,
didn't
ready
think of
to
mine.
go.
I didn't think of mine. Well, season 1 of our show was really, really hard. I mean, they just kicked us into the ground every single day because of fear. At the end of the day, I mean, we're very proud of the work that we do, and we're all writers, and we're small A artists, but they're making widgets at the big networks, and they need eyeballs, and they're driven by fear because there's so much money at stake. So a lot of their notes are coming from that place. Is it a procedural? Is it a DC comic? Is it a comedy? Is it a supernatural show? Like, what is this show? And they don't know because they're not writers. And so our job, we were getting piles and piles of notes every single day. It was really disheartening. And our job was just to have a true north, which really was as simple as not to suck, and stick to that. And the notes that we could stomach, we would take those notes, and the other notes we would just ignore. But now that we're in third season, it's been pretty smooth sailing. Like they've been wonderful. And a lot of their notes, they make the scripts better. A lot of, like, we get so enamored with our clever funniness or our great twists that often their notes are just how can we deepen this? How can we deepen this? Which is wonderful. We now have a new network executive at Fox, and we don't know if he hates the show yet or not. So that could throw the wrench in the works.
Good position to be in.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'll tell you next week.
I worked on a network show between Breaking Bad and Saul, and they are the worst notes ever. They're just because they don't trust the audience.
Right.
That's what it comes
They
down
don't trust
to.
the writers.
No, they don't trust they don't think the audience has an attention span to. It's like the note we always get is, "Oh, we want to keep turning cards over," which is such bullshit. It's just like things have to keep happening faster and faster. How do you sustain that for a whole season?
Right.
You can't do it. So it's just, I think they take good shows and ruin them.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. I already know this. That the entity is different depending on what platform you're working for. But writing is writing, and it's frustrating to when some people are overseeing your comments.
Yeah, it's almost the notes process for Riverdale. I know was very intense, especially for season 1 shows in particular. It could be really intense, especially when the network's trying to figure out the show, but we're also finding what the show is in those first few episodes. A pilot's a pilot, but sort of what's episode 2, what's episode 3, and we're finding what's at the heart of it at the same time. So it's sort of, you have to just hold on really tight. And the way we always look at it is we get notes from the studio, we get notes from the network. So there are a few steps in that process, and every single one of those steps is truly, and I'm not just saying this as a Ken thing, it is an opportunity to make the script better. And that's sort of how we take it. Look, okay, this is one more pass at it. This is one more sort of boiling it down, one more calcification. So, and the notes can be helpful.
Right.
Yeah.